This is a presentation about concussions. In 2016, almost 20% of U.S. adolescents in grades 8, 10, and 12 reported at least one diagnosed concussion during their lifetime, and 5.5% reported being diagnosed with more than one concussion. That is a huge number, seeing as the brain is still developing. This is the most important time for the brain to be steady and stable, and that it has brought more light to the situation. Look at the NFL, for example, with CTE coming into the picture, as it's always been there, but now more research is being allocated to look, and now that it's being looked into more than it was, there is more emphasis on making sure that the players are more ready to return to play and participation. So now we're going to look at the mechanism of the injury. There's three main mechanisms of injury as shown in the image down below. Obviously you have the most common, which is just direct impact, a direct blow to the head. You see that in soccer, boxing, and most importantly in football, or most frequently in football. But nonetheless, a blow to the head can cause severe and permanent damage. There are a couple other less common mechanisms of injury. One would be whiplash. Now imagine getting in a car accident and getting whiplash, and you can get a concussion from that, as well as a blast injury like people in the armed forces, in terms of like a grenade or something along those lines. Now, a concussion happens when the head is jolted hard enough to move the brain, causing bruising or bleeding. Now, that was from University of San Francisco Health. Now, if we look at the symptoms, there's a whole lot of symptoms. However, many of them are not necessarily easily seen as physical ailments. They're more personal. And so that's why it's always hard, because a lot of times the athletes are allowed to say that they're feeling fine, and the trainer in a sense has to believe them and allow them to return to play unless there's a very obvious and apparent setback from that athlete. So top symptoms include headaches, or pressure in the head, temporary loss of consciousness or confusion, feeling like you're in a fog, amnesia, like forgetting the incident, dizziness or seeing stars, ringing in the ears, nausea, vomiting, slurred speech, delayed response to questions, appearing dazed or fatigued. Now, I've actually had 2 diagnosed concussions, and I believe I've had 1 undiagnosed concussion following the second one. Now, that is when I was in mid-season, and I had just sat out roughly 2 weeks and missed 2 games. And when younger athletes have the chance to not disclose their injuries and return to play quicker, oftentimes they tend to do that, and that is what I did, unfortunately. was no real teaching of the concussions that I knew of. I didn't really know the full impact that it could have for that season or later on in my life. And looking back on it, missing another game or two is definitely worth my safety and health and all other athletes going forward. Now, response and treatment. The immediate response after the concussion is to obviously stop all activity. You don't want to have the athlete return to play, especially in that game. A lot of the times it's just to allow the swelling in the brain to decrease, and then also to avoid other triggers. For me, it was light that affected me, and I had this kind of constant nauseous feeling. Neither one is good to have, obviously, and you really want to sit out 1 to 2 weeks after all symptoms have subsided, which means that once light no longer affects you, or no longer getting that nauseous feeling, or whatever symptoms you might be having, once those stop and dissipate, then after about a week to 2, depending on the trainer and how they feel, along with the athlete themselves, then it's possible to return back to play. So we have 12 cranial nerves in our brain. They basically help us to smell, to see how our eyes move, our sensory, taste, hearing, and balance, and sometimes controlling the muscles that we have in our head, like to chew, and the tongue as well. Now, these senses can help an athletic trainer to basically to diagnose the concussion and to see how quickly the athlete can return back to play. Going back to my concussion, or one of my concussions, I had a little bit of a balance problem, and one of the tests is to actually stand heel to toe with your eyes closed and arms out to your side, and if you can balance, then you pass that test. However, because the concussion had caused me to lose some of my balance, I did not pass that test, and therefore was I continued to hold myself out of returning to play. So this can help the athletic trainer and the athlete themselves to really gauge how they feel. Like I said, that optic nerve, the vision is huge. Obviously, seeing if the light affects the athlete, if they can completely move their eye, and then that hearing and balance, the cranial nerve number 8, that is what players often call like ringing in their ears. That involves the hearing and balance. So these all can help both the trainer and athlete, like I said, to evaluate themselves and really get a sense of how what grade the concussion is based on a 1, 2, or 3, and how likely it is for them to return to play upon treatment and recovery. So these are my reference pages. Thanks for watching.